So almost 30 years. There you go. Now you should hear me better. We started actually in the secret money industry. So even today, Digimarc works with the central banks for anti-counterfeiting deterrence. So we work with central banks, and chances are high that if you have a paper bill in your pocket, there's the Digimarc technology on it. The technology evolved into the identification documentation. So Digimarc watermarks have been a predominantly security layer for the US driver's license for more than 10 years. We then slowly developed into the print and packaging. Print in regards of publications, books, magazines, leaflets, and even your weekly circular that you get from your local grocery store. And of course, based on the watermark power, we evolved into the packaging industry, and this will be the focus of our presentation today. Just a fun note, in 2015, Digimarc has won the famous Emmy Award for our audio watermark. It's basically a signal hidden into audio or video in any kind of media that turns a signal into consumer engagement. So we won the Emmy for our participation as an innovative solution for the Angry Birds movie when it was released back in the theaters. So the technology, or our flagship technology, so to say, is actually about hiding. Our goal is to hide technology into an imperceptible layer. We try to avoid the word invisible, because all of the printing, packaging, and security experts will basically always see a slight distortion. So the more imperceptible we are, the better the solution is actually. And there are two layers associated to it. One is the encoding, which is basically hiding any kind of signal. And the second layer is basically decoding. It's reading that signal. And I will give you some insights about the power of that combination in the following slides. So what we basically do is we hide some sort of a pattern, as you can see on the bottom left. It's kind of like a pattern of codes, two-dimensional data carriers in kind of codes, data metrics, QR codes, or the GS1, G10, like a pattern all over the design. And the benefit here is we work with the existing layers and color separations. We don't add any colors. We don't change printing technologies, processes, or anything. We work with the existing artworks and designs without any additional costs. And the goal is ultimately working with partners, creative media agencies, printers, converters all over Europe and the world to actually hide it as good as possible, but also make it as robust as possible to read. Now, one of our key industries where we are very successful, having clients like Walmart globally, also Netto, the German retailer, is actually enable them to have a much more efficient scanning process. So Digimarc technologies can improve your scanning rate more than 40%. So you can literally throw an item above the scanner at retail, front of store, and it will detect that item rather than scanning multiple times trying to find the code. Another layer, because we talked about inks, is actually the varnish. So we've been successfully working on our varnish solution. That basically means we don't touch any of the precious colors, inks, or designs. In some cases, like iconic products, like Nutella products, where you have a lot of white, premium brands, beauty products, where you don't really have imagery to hide something, we can work with the varnish only. So as you can see, those are two print sheets from R&D trials beginning of year, where we have basically a pattern applied to the existing varnish of your packaging. Again, no change, no additions or complementation of your varnish protective layers. And whether it's a matte varnish, a glossy varnish, a screened, or a very specific pattern, we basically hide the contrast by shooting very, very tiny holes into the flexo plates or cylinders for the applied varnish. And this basically enables to detect and identify any kind of printed item. And by this, especially through digital printing and inline marking, and we do work with major players like Matthews Marking Systems, Koenig & Bauer Coding, Domino, and many more on inkjet and laser coding. We can even apply a serialized watermark for single item level detection. I'll explain you more about that in our following slides on brand protection. And by this, the digital watermark could technically enable you multiple use cases at the same time. So a watermark applied on your packaging, visualized on the left, could enable you to do consumer engagement, right? Consumer scan, get gamification, customer loyalty, or any kind of consumer educational content. You can use the same code for your operational efficiency. You can make sure that the right pudding goes into the right cup with the right lip with the same technology without having multiple technologies at the same time. And of course, that will be a major focus today, will be the sustainability part. Digimarc has been successfully applied on all kinds of printed and rigid plastics materials to enable a better recycling and sortation process. And of course, you can even go as far as brand protection use cases with the same technology, which could be then serialized on top. And of course, just like the previous presentation, all of these solutions actually combine into a very strong new layer of omni-channel activities for any brand owner or retailer. So talking about applications, very important to know is the source of detection. We have two examples. So we have different light sources, cameras, so to say, which is like the human eye, the white light, usually within your smart devices, your smartphone, your tablet, and also red light, which is mainly used at retail, front of store, handheld scanners, and detection systems in your manufacturing process. They usually always have a red light camera, which is much more cheaper than a white light camera, right? So, and additionally, we have highlighted here the blue light source. Now, why is this important? So if you look at the bottom, you see a label. Let's say this is a product X, a very colorful design created by designers, very bright, right? As you can see on the bottom left. So a white light camera, your smartphone, tablet, will actually detect the slightest distortion. So we could technically apply an almost invisible code into that design. The cameras of your smartphone and tablet would still detect it and identify the content associated to it. Now the challenge in the real world, in production and retail environment, is limited light sources color space. So red light cameras, one of the biggest disadvantages, actually a very limited color space. Red light cameras and sensors don't detect any color that goes into the yellowish or reddish, right? Any kind of yellow color, red color is not recognized. You can see it in the visualization below the red light is how much is actually left being read by a red light camera. So very little of your initial very colorful design. So what we do at Digimarc is actually by combining blue light, and you can see a major difference in the visualization at the bottom is between the blue light and the red light. So blue light covers any kind of color spectrum into the yellow and into the red. And by combining these lights, as you will see later, we can actually improve a major milestone within the recycling sortation factor. So you always have to keep in mind on, depending on what kind of code you use, what are actually the light sources, the environment that needs to detect those codes. And by this, digital watermarks can be applied and are applied in many industries. We talked about paper, of course, food labels, any kind of thermal printed labels at print of site, so grocery stores, manufacturing. Of course, inline, as mentioned before, we work with the leading companies today. They have solutions in hand to apply digital watermarks. But you can also even apply digital watermarks into any kind of metal or surfaces, right? Could be vinyl, could be your chair, your flooring, or any kind of printed items. A major piece, and that's why it's in the middle, is actually plastics. So Digimarc watermark can actually apply into the rigid without any addition. And I'll show you more about this later. In the more, let's say, fun and creative corner of Digimarc solutions are apparel. So Digimarc watermarks are applied on all major league, Premier League soccer jerseys since almost 3 years with a partner of ours. So if you buy a Liverpool, Manchester City, Chelsea jersey, you already have Digimarc technologies applied to it and can authenticate the jersey. And of course, as mentioned at the beginning, tabs, circulars, books, magazines, and of course, any kind of media. Could be a social media video, could be your radio car spot that gives you a trigger. Hey, thank you for listening to our commercial. Let's go ride 300 meters to the next Lidl and you get a coupon 2 for the price of 1 whatsoever. And by this, digital watermarks can actually help you to go through the whole supply chain. So technically, starting from the materials, recycled materials, I'll explain more about this later, to the pre-press, design, and printing stage, where it's applied, manipulated, or used as a part of the design, to fresh fruit traceability. We work with the leading fresh berries producer in the United States that uses digital watermarks for track and trace at the production, basically at the farm, picking those berries all over the logistics, distribution, retail to consumers. You can use our technology in the packaged goods and fulfillment centers, distribution, logistics, to identify single item, batch level trays, or even the police. Of course, retail is where we come from. Front of store scanning, self-scanning, scan and go, inventory check, consumer engagement, point of sale. And of course, the consumers can connect to all of these technologies with a simple scan with their mobile device. And last but not least, very important, major milestone of us, you can use digital watermarks to identify plastics and make sure that it's sorted and identified right. So just quickly about the technology before we dive into the solutions is the product digitization. We heard about it in the previous presentation as well. So the ultimate goal is actually not only put a code, it could be any kind of code, onto your physical item. It's actually about creating the digital twin that is associated to that single physical item. Ideally in a serialized world where we can really track the item individually, but the reality on CPGs, FMCGs, fast-moving consumer goods, is costs, right? Cost is a very sensitive topic, so we're still working on getting more serialization into those fields. That's a different use case than we go into premium, fashion, or maybe governance like tax stamps, which is a different use case, right? The second part of it is actually connecting that digital twin that is basically ghosting your physical item into a smart system that tracks all of that activities. Who is scanning what, when, where, production, logistics, retail, consumers, and giving you those insights. And last but not least is actually the goal is, what do I do with all of this data, right? So if we talk about a chip spec that's produced 100 million times in Portugal, you want to know who's scanning what, when, where, how often, how long do they stay on your content page. So the goal of our platform, the product cloud platform as we call it, is actually to give you the intelligence about these data pieces and work on it on your marketing, as also mentioned before, to give you the insights to know more about your consumers and to personalize the experience. And by this, we can basically start with ensuring that the product is authentic, right? If I buy a product, and COVID has pushed it even more into the e-commerce, so today's numbers in regards of e-commerce activities are significantly increased within the last 2 years. Consumers don't spend so much time anymore at the POS, so point of sale at the retail, they buy stuff online. And with that comes the risk, you don't really know what you get when you buy something from Amazon Marketplace, eBay, or any official online platform. You just don't know. So of course, another part is actually measure as a marketing. So I'm not going to read out all of this, but it's really the central part is one is authentication. The second is marketing. Who's your consumer? How do they react with you? How often do they use online subscription systems and stuff like this? The second part about is working with that data and optimizing your operations. So most of the major CPGs, Danone, Mondelez, P&G, Nestle, you name it, they all produce gigantic numbers, right? Huge volumes of products, any kind of, any sort of. So how can I use innovation and technology to actually improve my operational efficiency? And last but not least, it becomes more and more important is actually consumer. We want a personalized experience. I want to feel like the brand cares about me. I want to know that the brand is honest to me. In the past years, you could have, mentioned you're organic, you're sustainable, and all that stuff. Today, people actually Google you, they research you, and they expect you as a brand owner to share committed information. And all of this can be combined in the Digimarc product cloud system, which basically enables you to not only identify the digital twin throughout the whole journey, it enables you a direct D2C, as we say, a direct consumer channel to connect, react, offer him a digital subscription service, share the data about your consumers, and just give them a feeling that you care about that person. Consumer relationship you can build up. Of course, as any dashboard, it's customizable. So you can actually see who's scanning what, when, where, whether it's in the production, the logistics, supply chain, or the consumers interacting with your content. How long do they stay on your website? What do they do on your website? So that really gives you insights to improve all of your online activities and your approach to consumers directly. A very important part about Digimarc's technology today is actually recycling. So I don't know which of you or who of you actually heard about the Holy Grail project. So just a quick introduction. The first Holy Grail, as the name states, a very important project initiated originally by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, 2016 to 2019. had the goal to improve recycling. Today's recycling numbers are really, really poor. So we don't know if it's a food, non-food item, monofoil versus multi-layer foil, and so on and so on. Back in that project, different solutions like chemical tracers and much more have been tested, evaluated on scale to find the right technology to improve this circular economy issue. So by the end of the project, Digimarc watermarks have been pulled in, and we were able to immediately improve that sortation process by more than 90%. So based on the success of Holy Grail 1.0, Holy Grail 2.0 by AIM, the European Brands Association, has been initiated. Today, with around 176 members, as far as I know, is one of the largest sustainability projects in the world, and basically a lead for many other regions and countries to look into. You can see some of the brand owners here. There's basically not one major CPG, no major retailer missing. We have software companies, we have hardware companies, we have printers, converters, sortation center providers. Any kind of member that has even the slightest touch in regards of CPG, FMCG products is part of this project. And of course, some are more active, some are less active, but the majority is really keen on working and establishing a solution for much better recycling. So what we basically do is we put a digital watermark either in a printed label, as mentioned before, or in the rigid itself. And by this, we can actually ensure whether this bottle is empty, crushed, soiled, or whatsoever. With a label or no label, we can identify this properly and sort it accordingly. So with this robustness, we can actually improve that process, which is currently today somewhere between 20 to 40% to more than 99%. So what we basically do is we put a pattern similar to the printed part into a rigid. This is the so-called 3D technology we refer to. So the bottle actually gets a pattern into the mold, either through thermoforming, laser etching, blow molding, however it's produced. And that pattern without any addition, so we're not adding any ink or any kind of new materials into the existing rigids, it's basically readable for the sortation or recycling centers. And by this, we can actually enable the proper identification. You see it on the graphics on the right. So basically all of these items, the waste in any kind of circumstance, right? It's not really pristine as it looks like this. It's more like this when it arrives at the sortation center. And we can still detect this with 99% accuracy on that sortation belt, whether it's crushed, soiled, covered, or in pieces with label or without label. And by this, we can help brand owners to make sure and get the numbers they need for EPR fee schemes, for EU regulations that might come up to show that their products are being recycled properly. And of course, consumers can scan it as well to identify, how do I recycle this? In some regions like Germany, you have a yellow waste bin, a brown waste bin, a blue waste bin. In some regions, you don't, right? And in some regions or countries, it's really hard to know how to separate your packaged product accordingly and properly. So in this case, you can actually share information with your consumers, how to sort, how to recycle properly at the same time, gaining the insights, who's your consumer, how often do they react, how often do they scan your product. And that improves significantly your product digitization. So by the end of this product, and I'm sorry for the wrong formatting on the left, is we just had a press release by AIM, the European Brands Association, confirming that we hit 99% detection and ejection. That means that this product, out of the 125,000 items we had with 26 different SKUs from all brand owners and members, we were able to identify 99% of these plastics and sort them properly: food versus non-food, monofoil versus multi-layer foil, rigids versus softs, and any kind of categories that are basically tied to it. And the beauty about this is there are no limitations. You can technically include unlimited amount of data to it, because all it does is it associates an individual code with this plastic item that goes to a cloud system. And you can have all the information you want, as much as you want, in that product cloud, going back to a sortation system. So unlimited data possibilities coming out of this highly successful project. And currently we are basically in phase 3, which is a large trial within the markets of France, Germany, and Denmark, where we are trying to confirm the numbers in a real environment, going through production, retail, logistics, retail, consumers, and waste. And as you can see, there's a violet light super quickly. This is the combination of red light and blue light. So for us as a human being, it looks like a violet light, but it's actually two light sources that actually identify those and sort it properly. Again, with a 99% accuracy. Quickly into the brand integrity part. So the same watermark in many cases can be also used throughout the production. So major brand owners have an issue that the wrong ice cream goes into the wrong cup with the wrong lid. And as a consumer, if you are craving for chocolate, you don't want to go home, open up your chocolate ice cream and it's vanilla, right? Or strawberry or whatever. So we can help to identify the product on the production. And today, most of the products actually have a data metrics code. So that's a very small code for those who don't know. Looks similar to a QR code. But the challenge there is in a production environment at the major CPGs, when they produce millions, hundreds of millions of items, speed. So a can, a bottle is turning, twisting. It's cold, it's wet, it's hot, whatever circumstances are existing. So, and then you need to try to hit that small particular data metrics code at one side of the product. That's a big challenge, and that's a big issue that goes into the millions of those CPGs. A digital watermark all over the packaging enables you, and it doesn't really care how the bottle is turning, twisting, whatever. The code is all over. So the chances are incredibly high that you will hit the code, identify properly, and make sure that you have the right yogurt in the right cup and the right lid on top of it. And very importantly, because we mentioned before, yes, the hardware part is the essential part. Today, most of the manufacturing plants have hardware in place, whether it's Datalogic, Honeywell, NCR, Zebra, or Cognex. And we're proud to say that we already work with all of these companies. So they have hardware in the market that can already read digital watermarks or can easily be upgraded with a software update to be enabled to read digital watermarks in a production environment. So we're reducing the cost of hardware investment significantly, which can go up into hundred thousands or even millions, depending on the size and volume of the factory. And brand integrity, a major focus, obviously, for today. So as Digimarc, we have acquired the product cloud company called Everything in January 2022. With this, we've actually finally have a product cloud system, as I mentioned before. And with this, our activities in the brand integrity business have been increased significantly. We basically help brand owners, and whether it's beauty, fashion, CPGs, automotive, or even tobacco and pharmaceuticals, to actually have different layers of protection. In many cases, it's not really about that one particular code you put on, which you could fake one way or another. It's really more about the two-factor authentication in many cases and a digital twin associated, because that's the only way that really gives you this multi-layer of security and protection. And for this, and that's a big difference and shift in the past, is we don't really care about its watermark, which is a great solution. But in some cases, it's just not applicable. If we talk about very premium products with minimum design, like no imagery, a very plain silver metallic, golden metallic, or any kind of challenging design where you can't hide something and the brand owner doesn't want to sacrifice the design, different technologies like NFC or image recognition or QR codes might be a better option. So for our product cloud, it doesn't really matter what kind of codes we combine for a multi-layer brand protection use case. So by this, we can actually have authentication tools, the product cloud. You can use our software, whether the independent app we have, or use our software development kit, the SDK, to integrate it into any kind of apps. We can even offer web scanning, which is very important for authorities, because you can't tell custom employers to have 50 different brand owner apps to authenticate new stuff coming into the country at customs. So web scanning is one option where they can just go to website, scan without the need to install an app and verify the product and authenticate it. Of course, all of this intelligence is being tracked in the product cloud and can be used for the insights of brand owners' side. And with this, we can basically enable from single item level, which could be let's say this pharmaceutical example, the package, the single item package itself, to the box, to the case pack, or even the corrugated shipping container, or the pallet even, right? We can have different codes, covert and overt, so basically visible and non-visible. You could have a QR code to scan natively, right? No need to app, no fuss, basically. And then that website, after you scan the QR code, asks you to verify the digital watermark that is hidden somewhere, which you can't replicate, can't even see. And with this, you can authenticate that, let's say, going the way back, that the corrugated shipping container is authenticated with the case back, with the product package, and with the single item product. And then actually see it on the below, use the data from raw materials to factory, logistics, warehouse, and a consumer to authenticate, get further information, or customer loyalty, gamification, etc. Again, just a summary, track and trace enabled through either two-factor authentication or single codage. We can track all of these data pieces. We can enable the recycling and end-of-life information and combine all of through very sensitive information like product manufacturing, and help the marketing and the company as a whole to gain that insights, because it's not only the data to share with consumers, it's also the data to improve your supply chain. You want to know how long your logistics takes. Do you have delays? Is your product too slow in the market? And all of this can be actually improved by having the right amount of data through the digital twins. And going to the final slides, this is a use case because we've been very successful working in the tobacco industry as well, as basically use not only the product cloud, but different technologies to basically enable the whole journey. Let's say you start from the leaves, the tobacco leaves at the farm, where you start to scan the first tray where those leaves go in, into the single cigarette. Today, in many markets, people still buy single cigarettes out of a bowl, right? So they grab into a bowl and buy 1 cigarette, 2 cigarettes, 3 cigarettes. And you don't know what you get, especially Middle East, Southeastern Asia, or APAC region. There are still a lot of countries where people buy single level cigarettes. And you can use digital watermarks actually to have it on the single cigarette, whether it's on tipping paper or design itself, to identify that single cigarette, right? This, of course, can go into the box where we have use cases in Southeast Asia, very successfully reducing counterfeiting issues and detecting gray market issues, where it's really hidden in the cigarette pack itself, up to the box, and of course, the corrugated tray. Now you can use these data actually to make sure that all the products are authentic, that you don't have a supply chain or production issue, but also use it for quality control. Again, as mentioned before, is my supply chain optimized? Do I have any delays that I need to fix? Do I have any holes that I might have to fix for gray market issues? And then, of course, in those markets, even share that data with consumers. So you can make sure that somebody scanning a cigarette in Bangladesh, Vietnam, Iraq, or whatever, is that single item level is authentic. Now, cigarettes are really not very healthy, but still the tobacco companies want to make sure that they don't get in counterfeited products that might be much more dangerous, right? So consumers can just pick up their phone, scan that single cigarette, and make sure that it's authentic. And if a Marlboro, Camel, or whatever brand, it is what they get, right? Same side for data. You can see who's scanning what, when, where, how often, and work with that data to have experience associated with it. Now, different markets have different regulations. So it can be technically on the health warning images on the cigarette backs here, or on the cigarette or the design hidden. It really depends on the region and the regulations in that field. And of course, last but not least, you can use the Digimarc watermark to identify for recycling, right? To make sure, even if it's paper-based, the foil or whatsoever, that it's properly identified, sorted, and help consumers to do the right things. And all of that journey basically can be traced and tracked and gathered into the product cloud, which basically gives you then the insights from farm to fork, basically from the leaf to the consumer to the recycling phase, and helps you as a tobacco company, as a government institution, to identify the problems, the solutions, the supply chain, or any gaps and holes that might exist throughout the whole journey. And that was a very quick run through to digital watermark solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, for the presentation. So time for one question before the coffee break, then we have time for more questions if you have. So any question from the audience?
I'm a bit puzzled because you have two activities. One is controlling the waste somehow, because you try to look for the recycling, but on the recycling, you don't need to get some sensors, because you have to know you cannot recycle everything, because I don't know how the bottles are, how I can really perform the recycling if I don't know if I don't have sensors to identify?
Yeah, so one of the goals at the Holy Grail project is we work with companies like Tomra, Peleg. They produce the hardware at the recycling and sortation centers, the sortation systems. And their systems can easily be upgraded with an upgrade module to identify digital watermarks. So the same sortation center today, let's say in Lisbon, that is not reading Digimarc could be easily upgraded and then identify all kind of plastics that have digital watermarks on it.
Okay.
Any other first question? Did someone raise your hand? No?
Speak now or
Okay, final question before the coffee break.
So for your systems, what is the lower level of the price of the product that can incorporate this?
it doesn't matter. Of course, we need to specify the use case, but since we come from CPGs and FMCG, it's really about price, right? If you have a chips bag that's like 40 cents and the margin is 3%, you don't really have money to invest in NFC and stuff. So our solution is scalable because it doesn't require any additions, right? You could put it into the gentleman asked about a water bottle. Like I paid, I think 39 cents at the supermarket across the street for this. So the margin is, I don't know, 2%, 3%. We can still work out something to have it in the rigid for the good purpose of sustainability, but at the same time to authenticate the rigid, let's say with the lid, because we also work with companies that put a code into the lid, for example, with laser. So you could combine and make sure that the water is authentic, at the same time use it for sustainability. And while combining multiple solutions, we can actually reduce the cost significantly. So for us, there is no use case where we would say we don't do this because it's scalable. At the end, we need to evaluate the whole project, but there are no limitations, whether it's a cheap water bottle or a premium whiskey for 500 euros. It doesn't matter.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now it's time for coffee break, 20 minutes. Okay, so enjoy.